Hey there, I'm Dayna Johnson, dental practice management expert, certified Dentrix trainer, and founder of Navoni, revolutionizing the dental industry through innovation and strategic leadership. It wasn't long ago that I lived in your shoes, navigating the daily challenges of managing a dental practice with the hopes and dreams of having a productive schedule, money in the bank, and getting home on time to my sweet daughter. After 25 years working in the dental practice and 17 years as a certified Dentrix trainer, I found my life's work, helping dental teams one-on-one, optimizing their systems and software. If you are looking to create the thriving dental practice you have always dreamed of and empower your high-performing dental team, you are in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to 2025. I can't believe it's here. It just seems like the last part of the year just flew by. I don't know about how you felt, Claire, but oh my gosh, I feel like I woke up and it was the middle of December all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were kicking off 2025, first quarter of 2025 with my good friend and director of operations for Puget Sound Perio, Claire Dickinson. Welcome, Claire, to the podcast.
Wow.
Hi. Oh my gosh. So the way I want to kick off 2025 is I really want to help teams, doctors, leaders, office managers really come up with a good game plan for carving out time for training. And not only that, but how do we motivate our team to do training? Because we can't always hover over them and make sure that they're doing it. We have to hold them accountable for the training and make sure that they're getting it done. But maybe we could talk about some ideas for making training a priority because, whenever I get into Facebook groups and somebody's complaining about something, it always comes down to team training. And training is a constant, I mean, you are managing how many practices? 3 or 4 practices. And it's also when you have 3 or 4 practices, you also want to make sure that everybody is doing things the same way so that your systems work really well. And what I'm finding is that our team members they're feeling so busy and overwhelmed that they put training on the back burner and they don't make time for it. Or even if they have time for it, they're not motivated to do it because they feel like there's other things on their plate that are more important. So I want to talk about that. And I know before we started this morning, you said that you had listened to a really good podcast that I'm going to listen to. And, I don't know if you want to start there or maybe you want to just kind of dive into some of the experiences you've had in your practices.
Yeah. So I won't name the podcast, but I'll touch on it briefly. And it was about behavioral sciences, which Dana, that's like that gets me up every day. The more I can understand about, how human beings function and work. And so interestingly enough, this particular podcast touched on the frustrations that we have with human behavior and people like either our kids or a spouse or coworkers, and how do we respond to it, and how do we motivate them to be different, and how do we do all the things that we talk about to make these relationships work, or these whatever work. And um one of the interesting things that this professor was talking about is it's really changing your mindset, right? And believing that people actually want to do good.
Yeah.
Most people do not want to go against what they're being told, or to, not do as well as, whatever. But really what it comes down to is if you have, a belief that people want to do well, but the thing is that they may not have the tools to do well. When we're training our team members and we're giving them this information, are we making sure that the people who are on the receiving end of it have the tools to be able to understand it and then to be able to perform it later.
Yeah, right.
And so I think it takes a lot of responsibility on our part to make sure that we're touching on people's different learning styles, communication styles. Are they watch it once, they're fine, or do they need it multiple times to be able to understand, or is it that they could be missing, for you, Dayna, you software train, right? And you tell the process is very simple
In
our
my
mind.
yeah, in my mind.
Most of the time. But they could be missing one middle link to the process that gets them from what they're doing now to what we want the outcome to be, and we talked briefly before we started about is like office managers get frustrated because even though we spend all this time and this money training them, let's say on the software, when it gets to the day-to-day action of using it, they're still doing it the old way.
Yeah.
So I think we need to shift our focus in how we're presenting training because it doesn't work for everybody the same way.
Agree.
And we need to have deeper conversations with these individuals that may not be in the mainstream of, let's say, being able to adopt the new, plan or the new training or whatever. Like what needs to happen in order for this, walk me through the process. Like we have to take that time and invest in these people to do that.
That's a great point. Let me just ask you a follow-up question. So let's say you have a team member who doesn't seem to be grasping the system or the process. Do you think that it's okay for us to then ask? Like, how do we ask in an appropriate way? Like, do you have everything you need in order to get the outcome or to get the result of this process that we're looking for? Do you have everything that you need?
Yeah. So I never ask. I mean, we can't ask. We shouldn't ask. If there is something that, could be inhibiting the ability to learn and to grow into whatever the process is. However, Dayna, you will frequently hear me ask, okay, so Dayna, talk to me about what you understand about the procedure. Let's walk through, what you think the outcome is, what your process is. I want to learn how you're doing it. And then from there, I can usually figure out where the disconnect is. And then we can start to have more of a dialogue that's not adversarial or you're not doing this right or you need to be motivated to do this different. It's more like, oh, well, that's really interesting. Have you thought about this? And why don't we try to connect this to this? And so it's a way of figuring out where, their brain is going and how the training is going for that.
Yeah.
So then I can figure out how to train them to get them to the outcome that I want them.
Yeah. I do find that if I am observing someone after they've been trained on something and I see that maybe they're not getting it, or a lot of times it just comes out like a team member might say, well, I really need to write it down, or I really need to get my hands on it. Not everybody is a visual learner. They really need to get their hands on it. And that's what I've found a lot of times as well. Or a lot of times they might have to, I don't know, jump rope and say it, or, whatever those things might be. I mean, you might have to do something fun to teach them and not just talk at them, So that's what I found a lot with training is just finding those really unique or different ways of teaching.
Yeah. I would say for the most part on our teams, everyone, of course, yes, we have, training gaps and we have, people who may not understand it as quickly as someone else. But I would say a lot of the things that I run to is fear of failure.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So when I start to see that there's a lack of adoption, which, I want to talk about adoption really quick too. You have to be very mindful about your changes that you're proposing and you're implementing into your practices. Because even if the change will benefit the practice and it will benefit the team members, et cetera, if it is not done in the right way, you're going to get resistance. Yeah. Right. And so you have to make sure that you understand the team dynamics to where you can say, hey, this is the change that we're going to be taking place. And if you have a team that has like heavy processors, people who need to think about things for a while, then you're not going to just do it overnight.
Yeah.
Right. But if you have people who are massive drivers, then yeah, you can say, we're going to implement this change. It's going to be effective tomorrow. This is what you need to know. This is the things that are important, so you have to know that too.
Yeah.
But going back to what I was talking about before is if I have people who are have a fear of failure, they know how to do it, but they won't do it, or they can't do it because of the fear of failure. So I will push them. If I can pick up that that's what's going on, I will push them to where they'll fail. So they know that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
That it's okay to fail, and I'm not going to be upset. That's awesome. Great. We just learned something. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. So I have to get them past that fear of that it's okay.
That's a
to
good
fail.
point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, another thing is, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I read this book. Have you ever read ADKAR? Um,
I haven't.
it's a like a change management book, and I mean ADKAR is an acronym for awareness, desire, and a knowledge. I think adoption and recognition, something like that. And there's always there. You kind of have to go through this process with a new team member, or if you're bringing on a new process. So a lot of times, if I'm training software and this is a new software for them, I have to kind of make sure that has everybody been aware that this is happening? So does everybody have the awareness of the change? And so I always want to make sure that everybody has everything that they need to know that this is happening. Like the train is moving forward, and the train is going in this direction. And then desire. I mean, you have to have desire in order to want to get on the train and go to where it's going to be. And then, because a lot of times trainers go right into the knowledge part. We as trainers, we want to dive right into the knowledge part. And I think we skip over the first two, the awareness and the desire. And if the team member doesn't have the desire to want to change, we're never going to get anywhere with them. Yeah. And so, trying to create that desire, like what's in it for me? Why should I do that change? Yeah,
exactly.
Do you get that pushback a little bit from team members? Like why should I do it that way?
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. Sometimes they're right.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Sometimes you have that person on your team that's a little bit of a mismatcher and causes just a little bit of friction. And sometimes some really good things can come out of it where we're like, oh, you're right. That was a complete waste of time. Let's do it this way. So you got to be open and curious.
I agree.
Right. And, as a big of a company as we are, we can't cater everything to everybody. It's just not possible. And frankly, if we did, we would get nowhere. So, we do set our standards in place, and we do set our, objectives for the year and where we're going and the things that we're going to tackle and, different training and et cetera. And we make it very globally known. And then when we start getting into the nitty gritty about it, that's where the hard work starts happening, because then that's where we have to start catering to people so we can get to the final outcome.
Yeah.
Right. And it's by being curious, being flexible, creating a safe environment for your team to whereas they feel like they're not going to get fired. It's safe to fail. It's awesome to excel. Right. It's, and we will get there. Right. And you do have some people who just do not want to change, and that's okay too. But then that's when you have a conversation like, hey, maybe this isn't the right thing now for you. Like maybe you don't like the direction we're going in, right? And that's okay.
I think that's okay. I think that's where a lot of times the practice owner has this fear of, well, it's going to be okay that they don't adopt our systems because I just need a body at my office, and you have to be okay that if this person is not helping your practice move forward or not adopting the systems and processes for your practice, then it might be okay that this is not the right practice for them. And And sometimes that'll turn people around, but sometimes you have to part ways, and that's okay.
You do.
Did you know that you could increase your team's productivity by up to 200% if you had a formal team training program in place? And businesses that do have a formal team training program in place also enjoy up to a 24% increase in profit margin. If you want to learn how and book a call with me, click on the show notes and book a free discovery call with me, and we will talk all about it.
Because if you don't, one of the things that I've seen is when we've made concessions for certain individuals, it causes friction for the other team members. And, my husband, one of the things that, he learned when he was in the hospital system, and I think we've talked about this before, Dayna, is what you permit, you promote.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah. And I need to repeat that. I need to repeat that. What you permit, you promote.
Right. And so if you're allowing this, you cannot get upset later when you're not getting the outcome you want from the rest of the team for whatever reason. If it's because there's a built resentment or because the team's like, well, if this person's doing it, I don't have to do it, or like whatever. Right. So I remind myself that all the time because, we're faced with these constant decisions on a very individual, unique level with each team member that we have. But sometimes a hard decision has to be made because I understand the concept of what you permit, you promote. And I have to think about what's going to happen further down the road.
For sure. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, and that's why I also love making sure that, like, a lot of times when you're doing training, the whole team is there together. And I know a lot of doctors don't like to close the office or things like that, but it makes such a huge difference when everybody is hearing the same thing and learning the same thing at the same time, and they're able to have this really good conversation and ask questions, and that's when sometimes things will come up that you didn't even think of, and you get this whole other perspective from a new team member or somebody that's been here for a long time, and they're really digging in their heels for something. But then you talk about it as a team and it's like, oh yeah, I mean, that's why she's been digging in her heels, because it's right, and I think that is a really important piece. If you do that a few times or a couple times a year, I think that's really beneficial for the whole team.
Yeah. And I think as leaders, in our practices, whatever that means for each individual practice, we have to remember that, when we get in a state of frustration or irritation, that we have to stop and change our mindset immediately. Doesn't mean that the problem still doesn't exist, but as soon as we get in that state, it becomes very unproductive. So we have to pull ourselves back out and keep focusing on where we want our outcome to be, and taking the energy to focus on, okay, so what tools do I have to help get this person to where I want them to be instead of taking energy elsewhere.
Agree. Yeah, this was so good. I think we gave our audience a few things to chew on for kicking off the new year. I know, in our courses, it's hard to carve out time, but do you find in your practices that, I mean, even though your practice is busy, do you feel that you could allow a team member to carve out, say, an hour a week?
For training per se. Yeah. So, I come from the old school of dentistry where we're like, you need to invest in your profession and you do the training, whatever. But that's not how we are now. That's not how it works. And so, for instance, if I have hygienists that I want laser certified, absolutely. The investment is there for the company because then that means that this is a service that our hygienists can be able to give to our patients. And so, yes, we invest the time and we give our team members the flexibility to carve out time within the business hours to invest in themselves, but because subsequently invest in the practice and the patients, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we do that. We also, we do set, our standards. Last year, we went through this whole process of the things that were really, really important to us as this is like the minimum allowable standard that we will have for all kinds of different things, how we greet patients, how we do certain procedures, how we talk to referring practices. It took a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we didn't roll out everything at once. We rolled out sections at a time, and we would spend time talking about it. And then we would make sure that we hit all the different learners. So visual, we did videos, auditory, or people who, like to read, they had like something tangible they could hold in their hand. We had people who weren't as digitally savvy. They had a notebook versus the people who were like, don't give me a notebook. I'm just going to go on to the drive. And, so we tried to think about all the different ways that we could connect with our individual people here so the message was there. And we also recognized and made it very clear with the team, this is dynamic. It'll continue to change. And it's it just has to be that way. And so you're constantly shifting, trying to figure out how to touch point with all these people.
I agree. I mean, we're in an industry that is constantly changing. I mean, you cannot have a practice the way it was even 5 years ago. Just technology, materials, staffing. I mean, everything is changing. So yeah, you have to keep an open mind about keeping your team up to date and current because the patients expect it. They expect to see those new technology equipment in your practice. They expect to get, technology sent directly to their phone or, they expect it. The patients expect it. And so we have to keep up with that. And that's important as well. Not just the inside, not just the four walls inside your practice, but also how are patients perceiving your practice as well.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way? What's your best contact info?
Best contact is usually email, and it's claire@pugetsoundperia.com, and I'm sure
I
you'll
will.
have that in the notes section as well. So
I will. Well, thank you, my friend, for all of your knowledge. You always bring a new perspective, different perspective. And I really appreciate that.
yeah, of course, anytime. Happy holidays.
You too. Well, we are kicking off 2025, and I hope that you found this podcast very informative and helpful for your practice. Please, we love 5-star reviews just like you do. So drop us a Google review or make a comment on our podcast. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to watching your journey of becoming a high-performing dental team.